All right, folks, welcome back into another edition of the High School Huddle, your one-stop shop for everything and all things Section 5 sports. I'm AJ Feldman, back once again joined by Mr. Carl Jones. We kind of took a half week off last week, presented you the High School Sports Awards show, but now we are back in the driver's seat. Christmas is behind us, the New Year's just upon us. Carl, how's your Christmas holiday?
Man, I'm safe and sound. I mean, not to get all cliche-ish, but I mean, hey, I ate some good food and I'm here, man. Just and healthy. That's all you can really ask for. Like the older I get, I'm not really into like presents and all that good type of stuff. I'm not really like the biggest gift guy. So like for me, healthy, family all good, they healthy. So that's all I can really ask for. What about you?
It was good. Went back home. It was a global warming Christmas, I guess. You know, it was like mid-50s. Our Christmas was spent outside at the fire, just drinking some adult beverages and having a good old time. Much different than last year when, Buffalo got hit with 90 some odd inches of snow and I couldn't get back home. I was supposed to anchor at the December 25th show at 11 o'clock and was not legally allowed to get on the thruway to drive home. So, we didn't have sports that day. Much different this time around. Domino's did not exactly go my way this year. Dead last place. So shout out to my mom for winning. Teased that on the show last week. So I did report who won. I was a bigger person, didn't ignore. But no, we had a good old time. Of course, some football on TV on Christmas, always a good thing. Football's really taking them. I mean, it's with the schedule and whatnot, but Christmas basketball was kind of like an afterthought, I thought, this year.
Yeah, I really got pushed. The only game that I watched was the tail end of Warriors Nuggets. And that's because like the Giants Eagles game was just kind of like I watched because of like DeVito and him being a ex teammate and all. But like once he got subbed out, I'm like, I really don't care about that game no more. So I watched that a little bit. But you're right though, like NBA on Christmas used to be me, man. I used to be locked in from the noon game. Nah, probably not the noon game because it used to be the Knicks. But like the 2:30 game on, like I'm locked in, right? And this year it wasn't the case. Like honestly, I didn't even know the Suns and Mavs was playing until I pulled out my FanDuel trying to figure out what I was gonna do. And I'm like, oh, NBA game going on. Let me see what's going on. But yeah, it was definitely a weird situation. We'll see. Christmas on Wednesday next year, so we'll see what the NFL what they try to do.
Yeah, they don't really ever do games on Wednesdays, but if there's one time, they've got this hold on it right now. So I don't know if they can give it back for a year. So, hopefully, yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, good to be back at it. We're still taking a little bit of our time off here as the holiday rolls down, but we are back in the gear of things in high school sports with the High School Huddle. Today, we are going to take a look at the New York State Sports Writers Association rankings for boys and girls basketball. We've had a couple of rankings come out, I believe, looking at it right now. Yep, we've had two rankings for both boys and girls basketball. Teams have played about 6 or 8 or so games, depending on the team. So we're starting to get a handle on who's good, who's not, who's great, et cetera, et cetera. Next week on the program, we're going to take a look at the hockey rankings. Those have come out, quite a little bit of Section 5 representation, so we're going to dive into those then. But we will start with basketball, specifically girls basketball first. And we start at our AAA classification where we do not have any Section 5 representation. As we kind of alluded to on previous podcasts, girls basketball in AAA, not exactly going to be the strongest classification for girls hoops this year. Fairport's, they lost a lot from last year. They're going to be a little down. Rush Henrietta still trying to build themselves back up. Nobody really to take that mantle, but hey, we said this about girls soccer last fall, and they ended up going all the way to the state Final Four, and they almost made the state championship game. So you never know what could happen. But in Class AA, we got just about everybody. We've got 4 teams in the top 9 in the entire state of New York. Hilton is at 2nd, Bishop Kearney is at 6, Victor is at 7th, and Schrader is at 9. 4 teams in the top 10, Carl.
I mean, this is what we kind of thought, though. We thought this was going to be a classification across not all sports, I guess, but like throughout boys basketball and girls basketball. This was the class where we're like, all right, there's a lot of heavy hitters just based off the fact you got BK in there and they're not up at AAA and a couple other teams that moved up. I mean, hey now, especially with Mariah Watkins not being available this year. You know, Schrader may not be I mean, it's still a great team, but like they're not just like this formidable favorite that you would assume coming into the year. I'm excited, and I know we aren't even in the new year yet. But look, I'm biased. State rankings, they got this one right. There's some really quality ball in Class AA, excuse me, here in Section 5.
Yeah, Hilton taking the number 2 spot in the entire state, which I thought was, a really impressive mark for them this early in the season. Mallory High is still just a junior. She's been doing this forever. I remember last year I was stunned by the fact she was a sophomore. Still this year, a junior, getting it done. They've already beaten Canandaigua, who, looking down further in the rankings, they're at 14th. Rounding out Section 5 is Mendon with 25th. So they beat Canandaigua already this season. They beat St. Mary's of Lancaster, which is the number 3 ranked team in the entire state this season. So they've already got, arguably one of the most impressive wins in Class AA this year for girls basketball. Their only loss is to Liverpool, who is number 8 in Class AAA, and in fact, the number 1 team of the New York State Public High School Association team. So their only loss is a really dang good one. They've got a couple other local wins, not exactly too impressive, but Hilton's getting it done so far. As we talked about last week on the show, Victor at number 7. They beat Schrader. They got to win against Penfield. They're getting their flowers. And as mentioned, Schrader at 9th. Obviously, no Mariah Watkins, but they're still getting it done with some decently impressive wins so far this season. They beat Penfield by 16. They take Victor, to the wire. They only lost by 1 point. And then a nice little win against Lancaster from Class AAA is pretty impressive. They beat them by 17. So it's going to be one of these brackets where if you make it out of Class AA, kind of like how AA was last year, but this year maybe even more so, you're going to be battle tested. You're going to be good. And you probably are going into the state tournament as the number 1 seed just because of all the teams you had to beat to get there.
Yeah, you know how we sometimes say in sports, like, like they haven't been, like we did with Monroe this year in football, like, we don't really know how good they are, right? Until they get to the Far West Regionals, we're going to know exactly how good these AA teams are when they get to that stage. And that's what it's all about. I'm excited.
Exactly. Now, moving down to Class A, Aquinas. Our top Section 5 team ranks 6th in the state. You've got Sutherland at 14, Palmac at number 16. I want to talk about Aquinas for just a little bit because I already got the chance to see Aquinas. They took down Penfield. I saw that game 58-55. A kind of a funky little game. Aquinas got out to a really fast start. They led 13-1, I believe. They held Penfield without a field goal for basically the entire first quarter. I think they might have eventually gotten to like 5 or 7 points at the end of the first. And then, Penfield, well-coached team as always. They did lose a lot from last year, but, they grind it out. They get back in the game. They're always, fundamentally sound. They pass the ball really well. And then it got down to the wire. Penfield eventually took a lead, but Molly O'Toole had a really clutch 3-point play to take the lead, and then they held Penfield without a field goal the rest of the way, so some really good defense. Molly O'Toole with 23 points in that game. Lauren Green, the freshman, with 18 points. I know she's a player that a lot of people are, got their, sights on this year for a freshman to really, jump onto the scene this year. She's already doing some good things. So Aquinas is leading the way in Class A, and they're going to be a really tough out when it comes sectional time.
Yeah, they just had a big year when it comes to soccer, so a little parlaying that into some success on the hardwood as well. Haven't been able to catch much high school hoops this year, but I did hear about Lauren Green and how a lot of eyes on her. So hopefully at some point this year I can catch one of her games and see what the hype is about.
Moving down to Class B so far this season, where we have a number 1 team, Hornell, coming in at number 1 in the states for the rankings in Class B. They've already got some really impressive wins so far this season. Livonia, Palmac, and Dansville, all teams that are ranked in their respective classes. Elsewhere in Class B, you've got Dansville at 8th in the state. You've got Livonia at 11th in the state, Minders at 19th in the state, and Waterloo at 25th in the state. And then we'll just jump down to Class C and kind of talk about these two as a whole. You've got Gananda also at number 1 in the state. With their undefeated record so far this season, they've got some impressive wins as well. They demolished a really talented Lions squad, 71-46. They also beat East Rochester 52-41. Moving down the rankings, Keshequa at number 7, East Rochester at number 10. Lions at 15, York at 20, Alexander 23, Dundee Bradford at 25. So we've got 7 teams in the top 25 here in Section 5. That Class C is always a difficult class. They do break it up when it comes sectional time, so I'm not exactly quite sure how those are going to shake out. But Class B and Class C, top dogs in New York State, Hornell and Gananda, Carl.
Yeah, I mean, as well as I do, like sectional time, those classifications can get a little competitive, and it's not just like, oh, it's Class C ball or whatever. They're gonna slow it down, play different. Like, no, there's some girls on there. I know Kaylee Marvin for Gananda. She be down there in the post doing some good things. Jayla Bell, excuse me, I think her name is from Lions. She's been doing her thing since she was like an 8th grader, from beyond the arc, tween, all good type of stuff. So like, don't get it twisted just because they classification say BC. Nah, they can still hoop, and I know we probably won't be able to catch them on a regular basis because they're a little further out. But when they are in town, I know last year, for example, when Lions played East Rochester, we went to that one, and I'm like, all right, now I know East Rochester good, but Lions they can play ball too. So that's how it always works out. And once again, I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm excited definitely to see how this that small classification turn out.
Yeah, especially in Class B and C, I feel like because these teams are so spaced out, they don't really play a lot of each other as much as you would think. When we get to like Class A and Class AA, Schrader played Penfield, this, that, 2 matchups, 3 in a tournament. Hornell's not exactly making the trip up to play, Waterloo. That's a massive drive. So, some of these teams don't play each other. I'm just looking at Gananda's schedule, trying to figure out a chance we can get them. I see right here they play Mercy on the 5th of January. What day is that? Is that maybe a round ball day? Oh, it's on a Thursday. So maybe we'll get there on a Thursday. So we can get out there. But no, Gananda's a really fun team, not so far away. They got a game at East Rochester. So I'm sure we'll get to see the Kaylee Marvin show sometime this season. And then just rounding things out in Class D, Elba at number 2 in the state, Hammondsport at number 14. So Class D, once again, Elba, number 2 in the state. Moving over to boys basketball, we will start up in Class AAA, where we do have some representation. Aquinas, the Little Irish, once again, a formidable foe this season. They are at number 12 in the state with a 7-0 record. And as always with these large classes, that 12th ranking is a little bit deceiving because they're actually number 4th amongst teams that are in the NISFA, if you will. So Aquinas, one of the heavy favorites here in Class AAA this season. Honorable mentions so far, Fairport and Franklin. And Aquinas has some really talented wins so far this season already. They beat Franklin, they beat UPrep, they beat McQuaid. So battle tested already. I've gotten a chance to see them. They got, we've talked about them, I believe on last week's show or 2 weeks ago. They've got some players, they've got some talent. They're going to get better as the season goes along. And already, 7-0 on the season, number 4 in NISFA rankings.
Yeah, quick anecdote about Aquinas. I was at the gym the other day, and somebody walked up to me. He goes, "Hey, you the guy I see on TV?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. That's what you want to call it, sure." Yeah. And he goes, "So have you seen Aquinas this year?" I said, "Nah, I haven't been able to catch him yet. Like, I'm sure I'll catch him in like once January began." He goes, "That's a team you need to go watch." All right. I'm like, don't know your name, but I appreciate the heads up, my man. So it's a community effort here at News 8. All right. You help us. All that type of good vibe. So clearly, my random civilian that I met at Eastport of Fitness in Henrietta, he know the Aquinas is good too. So I definitely gotta go catch the Little Irish show sooner than later.
How old is this guy? Is this a dad, a community member, a young alumni? What are we thinking here?
He definitely wasn't my age. He's not 25. I think he was probably like at least a dad age type of vibe. Like
perhaps,
but it wasn't like he didn't know what he was talking about though. Like Buddy said, "Oh, you the dude from TV." I said, "I guess." Like that's one way to call what I do. And then he said that. I was like, you know what? I'll write that down. I didn't know. My boy AJ has not seen them so far, but I will definitely put that down and tell people back at the office, the Aquinas is all right this year. So me myself, I gotta check them out because obviously so I gotta see it for myself.
Exactly. They got also on that Thursday, they got Monroe coming up. They got Franklin once again. So they're not playing a lot of these AA teams this year. These the Monroe County schools. They got, it looks like Penfield in a tournament, but it might just be the Penfield tournament on their schedule. They got Thomas. So Sutherland coming up. Not a ton of games on Aquinas' schedule this year, but Aquinas 7-0, 12th in the state. Moving down to Class AA, we've got Athena, which has really kind of taken the world by storm so far this season, beating everybody on their schedule, and they've played some really good teams on their schedule so far this season. They are at 7-0 on the year. They are 6th in the state, number 2 amongst NISFA teams, so one of the early state favorites. I mean, they beat Mendon, who came into the game undefeated, even though Mendon, a little bit down this year. They played a really good game against Monroe, and then they played another really good game against Franklin. So 2 really quality teams. They just beat them down. And the thing with Athena is, they got the Reeves brothers, all 3 of them. They got Corey, Isaac, and Isaiah. I believe I've got them all right. Then they got Connor Ozier and Z Johnson. And the thing with a team like that, you always question is, how do they all work together? Because, you have, the thing with Athena is they got 5 guys who can drop, 15, 20, even 30 points on any given night. How does it work when, somebody starts going off, and are you going to, ride the hot hand? Or are you going to, feel comfortable passing the ball when you know that, okay, if I decide to keep for myself, I could probably do some good things with the ball too. But the thing that I saw the second half of that Monroe game, the really thing that stood out was the passing. I mean, they did 3 no-look passes while I was there to set up buckets, but they moved the ball around well. They're well coached. Monroe was kind of in a zone, I think, for 1 possession. I don't think they were playing zone the entire time, but they were kind of just whipping it around the arc, as you can do with the zone. You can carry, pass it around the horn. And I'm just thinking, like, man, where's this guy at the elbow? You get it to there, it's going to be wide open. Boom, someone cuts the elbow, gets it there. They dump it down to Ozier on the low post. 1 dribble, boom, in. So they've got the horses, and they're battle tested this year. They were their News 8 Primetime 585 Spotlight Team of the Week this year for a good reason.
Yeah, I saw the highlights, that game you're speaking of against Monroe. I'm like, no look from like the 3-point line to the paint, like through a zone. That's kind of bold, my man. And you talking about how they can share the ball so well. I mean, it's also the fact you got 3 brothers, like, that's also together. So like they got a little chemistry. You feel like you can give it to your boy, actually your legit family member and all that type of vibe. So you can be a little bit more unselfish when you keeping it within the family a little bit, right? But regardless, it's an impressive team that I've seen just from the highlights that I've seen so far, and I can't wait to catch them too.
Yeah, we catch them a lot, especially because the Greece schools, for some reason, play their games at 6:30. So it's always a good route for the round ball roundup to get there to a 6:30 game and get to, some 7 o'clocks after that. So we'll get to them a bunch this season. Then moving down in the class, in the Class AA, we've got one other team in the state rankings. We've got Victor, all the way down at 28th so far this season, coming off of a Class AA title. And I don't think they've lost too much this season. They've got 1 loss on the season. It was to a good squad from the Buffalo area. I'm trying to build this up right now. And then also receiving some honorable mentions: Canandaigua, Hilton, Mendon, and Schrader. Hilton is actually going to play Athena tonight. As we record this on Thursday, they're going to play them in the final of the Hilton Holiday Tournament. So that should be another big test for Athena, and also another good chance for Hilton to stake their claim. But yeah, Victor, they're 4-1 on the season. Nothing's, they beat Canandaigua, who's getting honorable mentions. Thomas is always pretty feisty. Penfield as well. They did lose to Niagara Falls. I did have them right, who is the number 11th ranked team in Class AAA. So it feels a little low for a defending state champ, which didn't lose a lot of much, which hasn't lost a lot of games. So I would not be surprised to see Victor slowly creep up the rankings as we go along this season.
Listen, when I look at the roster real fast, I'm trying to say, who do they got back from that state championship team? They got 2 dudes that I know that are buckets: Garrett Clare and Griffin Hopkins. Griffin Hopkins changed his number to number 2, so he'll definitely look a little spicier in that number 2 as opposed to the 20 he had last year. And then they got the big boy down in the paint, Nick Leonard, who's a tight end on the football team. They got those 2 plus the big boy. They'll be all right. That's a really, really good Blue Devils team for sure.
Yeah, that's the team that's going to rise in the rankings. Moving to Class A, we've got East all the way at the top at number 2 in the state. A team that has been really impressive so far this season. I was a little surprised to see East so highly ranked this year. They haven't had the toughest schedule so far. They went to the wire with Edison. They beat them. They have a lot of really talented players. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them eventually this high, but so far, based on their resume, I was a little surprised to see East this high up. And then Monroe, you've got at 23rd in the state. Newark at 28th. Newark caught my attention a little bit. They've got some nice wins so far this season, beating Sutherland and Geneva. They're at 6-0 on the season. But I will say I don't see this much of a discrepancy between East and Monroe, where, you know, 2nd and 23rd. I think that's going to be a really good game if that turns out to be, Class A championship game, for example. But East has shown some good stuff this year, number 2 in the state.
That Moreau was up from B last year, right?
Or I don't know if they were B. I think they were Class A in basketball. Yeah.
Okay. So never mind. So they would have played each other in a crossover or something. Regardless, okay. The fact that they're in the same. Are they doing crossovers this year or no? Like A1 and A2?
All right, we're gonna have to look up in, let's go to the sectional time,
because that's like a big thing if that's the case. Because like if they're not doing that, then this is really gonna be crazy, and I can't wait to see how it turns. Now it'll still be great games regardless, but like if they're not, I don't like separating it at all. Are they separating it?
I'm working through it right now. My computer is very slow. Anybody who knows me and talks to me, my computer is working really slow.
I hear you.
I bought this. Yeah. Side note: I bought this computer when I went off to college, and I am determined to let this thing make it 10 years. No, Class A is just Class A this year for boys basketball. So, fireworks to say the least. And then last year, let me see if I can get this from last year.
Monroe East Championship at the Big House. Lord have mercy. Yeah. They might. That's gonna be crazy. Oh my lordy. I mean, that's a long way before we even get there. I think they'll meet up in the regular season, so we ain't even gotta worry about the Big House. But man, I can't wait.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun game. They just had one. No, did they have two? No, they did cross. They had the crossover last year because it was Irondequoit winning in A1, and then it was Sutherland beating East in A2. And I don't think Monroe was there, but Newark was the Class B champion. They ended up going all the way to the state semifinals, and that's the team up in A. So I think that's kind of the one takeaway I want to take away from this very long caveat is that Newark is from Class B to Class A this season. So that's something to keep an eye on. Moving down to Class B, you've got Hornell. Both the Red Raiders doing some really good things so far on the basketball courts this season. You've got and Monroe was in Class A last year. They lost to Sutherland in overtime. I was at that game. That was a really good game. I should remember that. Back to Class B. You've got Hornell at 6th in the state. You've got Avon at 16th in the state. You've got Leroy at 21st in the state. Avon with some impressive victories so far this season. They beat Leroy 42-34 in a low-scoring affair, and then they took down York, which is the number 2 team in Class C, at 62-47. So while Newark is up to Class A, that kind of leaves a little bit of a hole in Class B where they will break it up Class B1, Class B2. So 3 teams represented in Section 5 so far this season.
And another anecdote from the gym, I think the Avon assistant coach or I think he's an assistant coach. I think I seen him at the Big House one time. Seeing him in the sauna, I'm getting real specific here. I'm sorry, y'all. But regardless, seeing him in the sauna, and he was like, yo, we're going to be really good this year. We about to play York tonight. This was whenever that game took place. I was like, all right, I'll see you. I said, I can't get you tonight because I don't got work. But, like, I'll let me know how that turned out because they was going up against Pangrazio, a really good baller that York has. And obviously, Avon pulled it out. So whatever your name is, I'm going to get you next time that we get to see you in the gym. But you didn't lie to me, so I respect that now. So now I got to hold you to a higher standard for sure.
This is where all of Carl's basketball info comes early in the season. Just random dudes coming up to him at the gym. And hey, so far they've been right. They haven't been like, oh, I don't want to, put down a team. They haven't been like, oh, check out this team. We're really good. And then it's, really bad team. I don't want to, toss a team under the bus. Let me think of the worst team I could possibly think of. No, we don't want to. We find more colorful ways to talk about our bad teams on this program, but no, the people are not lying to Carl, which is always good. And then moving on to Class C, as I mentioned before, York, number 2 in the state. They've obviously got Jake Pangrazio. They've got an impressive win over Avoca Pratsburg. They beat them by 29 points. If you know anything about Avoca Pratsburg, you know that's impressive. They also beat Bishop Kearney 76-60, which was the game that Pangrazio really went off. And then elsewhere in Class C, going to be another bloodbath this year. They break them up into 3 different classifications. So, a lot of titles to give out. You've got Lions at number 4 in the state, Pembroke at number 9 in the state, Boulevard Richburg at 13th, and Batavia Notre Dame at 19th. And, Lions, they lost a lot from that last year's team. That was a team that could really, had some really impressive cast of characters. I'm looking exactly to see who they have left on this team, because I know they still have some dogs, but, they lost a lot from last year. Still at number 4 in the state, York and Lions, 2 teams in the top 4 for Class C.
Yeah, I think Lions, they had a big boy that was young. Like, really, he walked past me, and I put out my football talk. I was like, hey, man, you playing the wrong sport. I didn't mean to be disrespectful, because, like, he was good on the court, too. But, yeah, no, they definitely had a youngster, I know for a fact, that he was either a freshman or an 8th grade, maybe even a sophomore last year, that was fairly tall. And I thought, you know what? You put your hand in the dirt and put a helmet on, I'll call Dino Babers for you right now. Now, granted, I can't do that no more. That won't help him out, because Dino Babers is unfortunately not with SU no more. But I got some other connections that can help you out, my man.
Yeah, I forget who exactly. There was a guy, I was at the crossover game, that his family, anytime he made a bucket, it was I think they're calling him Baby Shaq. So I don't know if that was him.
That might be him. That might be him.
But they got some guys at Lions this year. And then moving down to Class D, Avoca Pratsburg, number 3 in the state. They did lose to York, as we mentioned. They also lost to Arkport, Canaseraga, but they still got one of the Putnams. They got McCoy Putnam. They've only got one Putnam this year, but until that that chamber is unloaded and all those talented dudes are graduated, I'm not betting against anybody except for Avoca Pratsburg.
Agreed on that.
Nothing else you can say. And then we'll finally are wrapping up our show with a little bit of hockey talk, our games of the week. As we mentioned, next week we're going to kind of get more into the hockey stuff as, some of these more teams get some games under their belt. But there are some good games coming up on the schedule. Carl, your game to watch for the next coming week.
Yeah, hockey. Y'all know that. That's my number 1 sport, right? No, I'm kidding. But for me, though, I saw Brighton. I actually saw both of these teams earlier on this year. Brighton taking on Portside. Brighton HFL, excuse me. We take on Portside January 3rd. And I was tuned in because I'm like, wait a second. Both of these teams got some really good players that lead the way. For Brighton, it's going to be Emmett Lant. Has 13 goals on the year. I think I saw him get a hat trick, maybe even 4 in a game. But, like, he scored every single goal for Brighton, and they ended up winning the game. And then he's tied for first in all of Section 5 with 13. And then on the other side, for Portside, Sal Balby, lead is 4th in Section 5 with 19 points, 8 goals, 11 assists. So just from my perspective, neither of these teams have really impressive records. Portside is 5-3. But I just want to see how the Stars, go at it. Guys are competitors, and you want to prove your worth. And I'm sure those guys will want to put on a show when they're up against pretty good players.
Yeah, especially, top lines going up against each other. They're going to see a lot of each other. Wouldn't be surprised if they're tasked with marking each other. So that should be a good game on the ice. I'm going to take a look at Hilton versus Pittsford, 2 of our top teams in the area. Pittsford, 8th in the state ranking so far. They have a 5-1 record, taking on Hilton 7-2. Hilton not ranked, sort of because of their weaker schedule so far this season. But if they can take down Pittsford, watch out. The Cadets are going to shoot up in those rankings. Hilton's had an impressive start to their season so far, 7-0 in Section 5 play. There are only 2 losses to out-of-the-area teams. Their most impressive victory so far this season, a 4-1 margin over Thomas in the end of November. Leading the way for them so far this season, Cameron Stewart, 8 goals and 4 assists, and they've got a really impressive goalie in net so far, Aiden Hill, a 6-1 record, a 171 goals against average with a 942 save percentage. And then Pittsford, 5-1 on the season. They lost to McQuaid in the opener, who is the top-ranked team amongst Section 5 in New York State. Since then, they haven't lost, 5-0. They beat Webster Thomas 4-1. They beat West Jenny 3-0, which anybody who knows anything about hockey, in this part of the state, another impressive win. West Jenny's 11th in the state. Leading the way for them, Keegan Garver, 6 goals and 3 assists. And then their goaltender, Wilson Sizzido. We're going to go with Sizdo. We'll have to figure that one out. A rogue Z in that name there. 4-0 so far in the season with a very nice, a goals against average of 0.69 with a 946 save percentage. And the thing that really stood out, the goalie numbers caught my eye at first. Then I realized how many shots this kid's getting on net. Pittsburgh as a whole is only allowing 14 shots per game, which is pretty staggering. 20 is good. 14 is really impressive. So the defense for the Pittsburgh Panthers, congratulations. They don't get as much love as the goalies or, the forwards, but shout out to the Panther defense so far this season. That's quite the number.
Yeah, I mean, even someone like me who's an expert in hockey, I know that's an impressive number right there. No, but I think from my perspective, what's kind of cool so far is obviously that game in particular, with those two teams being impressive this year. It's kind of how it's an ebb and flow of what teams are really good year to year. Like when I first got here, Victor was unreal, right? And
yeah, that's the real thing is Victor is, kind of having a down year, which I didn't think was possible in high school hockey.
Yeah, exactly. And then Batavia Notre Dame United is having a really good year. And I'm like, man, it's easier in certain sports. They're like, all right, I know they're always going to be good. I'm like, oh, hold on, let me get my brain right for a second. Batavia Notre Dame United, they good? Oh, snap. Okay. I know Churchville Child always used to put up a lot of goals. They're having a little bit of a down year this year. I'm like, okay, hold on. Who's good? AJ helped me out real quick with two of the teams. I'll catch out more of them as this year progresses.
Yeah, Victor at 2 wins, 3 losses, and 2 ties on the season. Churchville Chili 1-8 on the year. Churchville Chili, they had that really dynamic line last year. Only Parker Farnham's around this year. 11 goals, 7 assists. He's doing the best he can, but still, one player can still do a lot, especially come sectional time. You start double shifting them. Basically, never leaves the ice. Work on your conditioning, son, because you're gonna need it come playoff time. But that'll do it for us on the High School Huddle. A little bit of basketball talk, a little bit of hockey. Once again, next week we'll dive a little more into the rankings. And soon, I believe next week we are going to have our first round ball roundup of the season. I believe we'll start that on January 5th. Not for certain, so don't hold me to it. But usually once we get past the holiday season, we all start working again. We have to balance the Bills playoff run with round ball roundup. So a lot of long hours, but we'll see how the Bills go, whether or not we actually have to go on any home games. We'll see if they even make the playoffs because, they're at 90% right now, but 98-100, Carl.
Yeah, facts, man. I mean, I can't wait, though. I know we've been getting a lot of emails, calls, waiting for round ball. I'm so happy that y'all are enthused. We can't wait, too. But just wait on this one more week, y'all. One more week. I'm so happy that y'all sending the emails and the texts and the calls and all that good type of stuff. But, just wait on it, all right? Don't give up on us yet, all right? We need our little recovery time, and then we're going to come back full throttle beginning of the new year.
Exactly. So, for Carl Jones, I am AJ Feldman. Once again, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, RochesterFirst.com on YouTube. Thanks for listening, watching, subscribing. Have a safe, happy, and healthy New Year's. Stay off the roads if you need to. And we will see you next year.